Welcome to Podcast Awesome. In this series of Nerd Show and Tell episodes, we chat with members of the Fun Awesome team, take a deep dive into some of their recent work, and share the nerdy interests that enrich their lives.
Fun Awesome, they'll make something awesome. Fun Awesome, they'll make something awesome.
I'm your host, Matt Johnson. In this podcast, I catch up with Alex Poiry, Fun Awesome's head of security. This conversation was really funny, and we covered a lot of territory. Some of the topics include how he found his way to tech after he'd gotten degrees in history and German, his love of early 2000s memes, historic European martial arts, and its connection to virtual reality, how he gave himself tennis elbow with a longsword, and a whole lot more. So, Alex, thanks for hanging out on the Nerd Show and Tell. And the first question out of the gate, I guess, would be in your Slack channel, in the Fun Awesome Slack channel, you have given yourself the name Alex Yellow Dart Poiry. And I had to do a little background information check on Yellow Dart. Can you tell people a little bit about where that comes from?
Yeah. So for some of the probably younger people who might be listening to this, back in the day, there was a web. It's still out there. You can still watch it, but there's a thing called HomestarRunner.com. It's still out there, and it's a guy who made just little short web videos, but they were all animation. I can't remember what technology he used. One of them is called. One of his little episodes is called "The Well Thought Out English Paper," and it's basically a kid writes him a message and says, "Hey, I have to write an English paper. How do you, can you write it for me? And so he writes out this well thought out English paper, and as he's doing it, he's explaining this is how you get good points, with the teacher, and so. He says, it couldn't hurt to jazz up your name a little bit. How about Kyle, the Yellow Dart Smith?
Start out with a title page. A well-thought-out English paper by Kyle Smith. It couldn't hurt to soup up your name a little bit, Kyle. Like throw a cool nickname in there, like Kyle, the Yellow Dart Smith. Oh, yeah. That right there, I'll get you.
And so anytime I go someplace and they just let me free form type like my name into a field, like I tend to do something a little silly, a little wacky.
Silly.
So just crazy.
I mean, why not? Why not? It's funny. I looked it up on Urban Dictionary, and it goes right along with what you're saying. It says a cool nickname that will easily earn 5 to 10 extra credit points when added to an English paper. And then, in quotes, a well thought out English paper by Kyle Yellow Dart Smith. And I was like, what the heck is this? And I started following the links. I'm like, oh, Homestar Runner. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
We should definitely link that so that other people can just, don't do just click the link. Just go watch it.
Of course. Yeah. It's like classic dork techie culture from the early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good
and how
stuff.
to draw a dragon. That's the other one we'll link in there.
Nice.
Unrelated, but important.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about your background professionally and how you found your way to Fun Awesome and kind of what the connection was there.
Well, my background professionally begins in the year 2000. I had finished high school and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for college. And there was a company in my hometown called US Telecom. And just through like knowing some people and some friends, I got a job there as a marketing intern. And one of our software engineers was a young fellow by the name of Travis Chase.
Oh, yes.
So if you guys haven't heard of Travis Chase and you're listening to this podcast, it's basically one of the co-founders. So Travis, real nice guy. I like I said, I worked in marketing. He was over on the software side of the house, but I did a lot of like crossover stuff. So our marketing campaigns were all run via these fax blasters, which I maintained, and like there was some scripting for it and things along those lines. And so I knew Travis. I had this kind of intro to tech and marketing, and then I got laid off from US Telecom and just went my own way. Went to college, majored in history and German. And then I met my lovely wife-to-be, and my life plan had kind of been to go work for the U.S. State Department, which is something that's useful. Like when you have degrees in history and German, it is something that is useful. But it's a very military-like life. Like you're going to be bumping around from place to place, writing reports. So it's not a very stable life as far as like living in one place for a long period of time.
Right.
And I don't think my wife was particularly interested in that. And I was like, well, what else do I know and love? And then like basically after history and German, like the next highest thing that was interesting to me was computers and software engineering. So I didn't actually really leave college. Like I just went to college for 8 years and got 3 triple majored effectively, but I basically went back and got a degree in CIS. And then from there, just kind of the regular progression. I moved to DC to work with Booz Allen Hamilton. Then I moved back to Kansas City to be closer to family, but still have like a career. I ended up at a place called Cerner, which got acquired by Oracle. And Travis and I had kind of kept in touch off and on because if you reverse back to about the year 2000 and must have been 2008. Well, whatever. It was around the time that Obama got elected the first time. I don't remember what year that was. Was that 2008? Yeah, it was 2008.
I think so. Yeah. 2008.
Yeah. Travis and I both by total coincidence ended up working at the same company, which was Gestalt, which was later acquired by Accenture. So I kind of got back in touch with Travis and kept in touch with him off and on. And then when I decided to leave Cerner and look for something new, I just reached out, and he had something for me here at Font Awesome.
Nice. And your role is related to security, correct?
Yeah, I am ostensibly, in title at least, the head of security for Font Awesome. It's, I guess it's kind of the first time there's been we would call like a dedicated security role. Having spent time with the code, I can say that we've got good engineers. There's some security that was kind of baked in from the beginning. So it's always good to see, but we're bringing more like the holistic security approach and all that jazz.
Yeah. Well, that gets into things that I'm very not versed in. Or what is it that you're securing? Is it more like customer information and securing customer data, and what all is involved with that?
Okay, so let's talk about security. I'm getting into my love language. So there is a sort of a quick definition of security. Security is effectively anything that you do that protects an asset which is vulnerable to some kind of exploit. Every person, every group of people, every company, every household has something that they deem to be valuable, right? It could be anything. It could be your computer. It could be your silverware. It could be your car. It could be your totally awesome means of providing and distributing icons across the globe. That's your asset, the thing that you deem to have value. Almost all assets have some inherent vulnerability to them. Cash is an asset. It holds value, but it's small and portable, so it can be stolen, right? Cars are partially valuable as transportation, but they're also partially valuable as like status symbols. So a person can reduce the value of your car by scratching it up with a key, right? So the fact that your car is a status symbol and it's got paint on it makes it inherently vulnerable to damage, stuff like that. So if you want to understand security in the context of Font Awesome, you have to figure out what it is that we value. In a sense, one of the first things is that we have a set of icons, some of which are free and some of which are not free. Right? So doing something to prevent the not free icons from being used freely would be an aspect of security. But in reality, that's probably not the biggest value that we provide to customers. The biggest value we provide to customers is probably our distributed network. So if you use Font Awesome, we put those icons that you want right at the edge so that your network can go out and grab them really quickly and load them up so that you're not, running into delays loading pages and stuff like that. So that is a concept in security that we would call availability. The value proposition, or one of the main value propositions of Font Awesome, is that our icons are available, and they're available very quickly. So a lot of security conceptually is making sure that those networks properly monitored and secured and, so on and so forth. There is also, of course, the, general customer data kind of thing that we're concerned about in a general sense. The real beauty of Font Awesome is we just have so little customer data that it's like there's not a lot to be like super duper concerned about a lot of times.
Right. And that's a real value that we have too, is that we want to protect people's privacy and not ask for more than is necessary,
Yeah. I mean, I think in a modern context, people are always trying to extract sort of like the maximum amount of value that they can out of just people.
Right.
But they don't necessarily want to give anything back, right? They're just like, well, if I know this about you, is there someone who is willing to give me money for that information? Right. And that's kind of why things like GDPR exist, is because basically, the governments of Europe kind of got sick of this stuff. I mean, because from their perspective, it was a violation of human rights effectively. And that's actually one of the fantastic things that I've experienced, like working at Font Awesome, is that the underlying ethos of the company is like, hey man, just be cool. Don't do that jerky stuff, right?
Right.
Like all we need to do is send you an email if something goes wrong or if something goes right. If you want to give us your first and last name, that's cool. We don't need to know what year you were born. We don't need to know your gender. We don't need to know your religious preferences. We don't need to know what browsers you use or where you shop. Right. We're going to shoot you an email every once in a while. Have some icons.
Switching gears a little bit.
Away from marketing.
Yeah, right.
Font Awesome's great, guys.
Yeah.
Bye, Font Awesome.
You don't have anything to worry about. Your data is safe with us. Really.
We love what we collect.
Yeah. What tech are you interested in learning about these days? Is there certain things you're kind of keeping an eye on the news, or?
I'm always fascinated by ways that you can help people learn something new, or learn something better, right?
And that's a technology in itself.
Yeah. The technical definition of technology is the application of like scientific thought in order to accomplish a goal. I think like that's not a perfect definition, but it's in that neighborhood. I recently found a thing. I missed the Kickstarter, but it ended up being on sale, so I ordered it. There's a thing called Spintronics. And this to me is fascinating because at the basis of all computer systems, of course, are electronics. And there are aspects of electronics that, while I don't necessarily need them for my job, like I think they're important, and I always kind of like struggle with them and stuff like that. So it's like trying to like wrap your brain around like some aspect of how a circuit works. Like, okay, now do I need to be concerned about the volts here, or I need to be concerned about the amps here, right? And like what about this resistance aspect of it? And will this burn out my LED if I try and connect up a circuit this way? And if you search online, you'll find a lot of people, they're trying to use water as an example of how to think about electricity, right? Like water pressure through a pipe and so on and so forth. But I think even that's kind of a little bit unhelpful because like it's still like if you don't really have an intuitive sense of the way water moves through pipes and the way pressure works within pipes and stuff like that, like it's not a metaphor that's super helpful. Spintronics has built a fully analogous circuit system that works entirely on physical properties of like stored energy. So like it's got a battery in it. The battery is just this little spring-loaded thing. right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, listen, if you're going to get electrical power, it's effectively analogous to like you storing the power of your arm into this little, spring. And then the circuit is chains of a known length, and that can help you with the understanding of like coulombs and stuff like that. And then like they've got like an ammeter, which helps you with the understanding of like amps. But what it does is it's got like, it looks like a little tiny like steampunk Victorian like phonograph player. So like it causes it to spin, and like so you hear a higher pitch. So it's visual, it's hands-on. You can build the circuits, and they add all of this sort of like, like sensory stuff to it so that you can really get a feel for it. And that is using old technology to help you sort of understand modern, newer technology and stuff like that. And that's something that I've always struggled with. Like I'm constantly like forgetting things. I've been trying to like teach my daughter a little bit of this stuff. And so now I've got this great toy that's fun to use. It's much more intuitive, and it has kind of a steampunk aesthetic, which is cool.
Yeah. No, it's such a great way to learn, is that if you can involve as many senses as possible, create as many analogies as possible, all those things just sort of create connections to where you're like, oh, okay, so this was in a real world example. It's kind of like this. I've learned well in that kind of style myself, like if I'm learning a new technology as a writer, I'm constantly always trying to think of a real world example. Like I worked at a data analytics consultancy for a while, and as I was trying to get my head around that technology, I was always looking for ways to explain it in sort of layman's terms so it would actually stick. That's super interesting. That's very cool.
Metaphors to me are probably one of the most powerful tools that humans are able to wield for like, conceptual type stuff like that. Like a good metaphor is worth. I was about to say it's worth its weight in gold, which is kind of a metaphor, and it's simultaneously ironic because metaphors don't weigh anything. So anyway, you get my point. I agree. Metaphors, bringing it back in, finding ways to turn it around and help, humans get an intuitive understanding of stuff. That stuff is just Italian chef's kiss.
Yeah, for sure. It's so great. Okay, so moving on to very important subjects at hand here. What icon pack do you think should make it into the Font Awesome canon that is not currently a part of the icon canon?
Oh dear. No, it's fine. It's fine. I have very I have pretty hyper nerdy interests for the most part, and I've made some jokes like this around Dave. Sort of caught him rolling his eyes at me. So I don't think these are going to make it into the canon. But right off the bat, I definitely think we need all of the Klingon characters. We've got, we've got the Latin and some of the Cyrillic characters. I think Klingon possibly. I mean, and if maybe you want to open it up to a different fan base, the Tangwar characters from Lord of the Rings, assuming those don't belong to the actual like estate of J.R.R. Tolkien and now I guess Amazon or whatever. Love to bring those in. That would be fantastic.
So do you go so far as have you learned to speak Klingon, or can you read it?
I know a little bit of Klingon. The weird thing about Klingon, obviously, totally made up language.
Right.
In case you guys didn't know, Klingons aren't, we haven't actually encountered them yet. I don't actually know the Klingon characters. I know the transliteration of Klingon. So Klingon being written with the standard like Latin characters that we're familiar with. So I know a little bit of Klingon. Like they say kapla, which is success, right? Standard Klingon greeting is like nuchnek, which means kind of literally like, what do you want? Various like words and titles. The grammar that the people made up for the Klingon language, very alien. So it is difficult to wrap your head around. So when it comes to stringing together words into like coherent Klingon sentences, not so good.
Right.
A couple phrases here and there. I teach them to my son. He just yells them periodically in the car at people, although like they're always, it's always the wrong context. Like kapla, like when you do something well, success, that makes sense. But he says things like, he yells like, I jumped, like, just shoot. And I'm like, well, it's Klingon, so good for you. But
it's sharp sounding, and it sounds cool to say it. So do you have some favorite or a favorite font awesome icon?
Yeah, going back to my love of like kind of older internet memes, I'm a big fan of the honey badger.
What's the background on that meme? That's kind of going over my head a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it was I can't think of the guy who did it. It was he would take nature videos and he would do this kind of like it would be like a regular nature video where normally you would have had like this like very serious English guy with a lot of gravitas talking about like a thing. But he does this like really campy, like wacky, like, and he doesn't even like, he's not even really giving you like super great information. So in the honey badger thing, it was a YouTube video and he's just like, the honey badger, he's like, the honey badger, he's just crazy. Like, he just doesn't care, like, he's just like, what do you want, stupid? I'm just going to eat this now. Okay. Shut up.
It's pretty badass. Look. It runs all over the place. Whoa, watch out, says that bird. Ew, it's got a snake. Oh, it's chasing a jackal. Oh my gosh. Oh, the honey badgers are just crazy.
It's the honey badger. And he did several of them. I don't know why the honey badger ended up getting like 38 billion views and like the other ones got like 10,000. But like the honey badger.
Any other animal whatsoever. Look, and it's just grunting and ew, eating snakes. Ew, what's that, a mouse? Oh, that's nasty. Oh, they're so nasty.
The early 2000s meme stuff, the stuff that really stuck for me was the G.I. Joe PSAs.
Oh, fantastic.
Who wants a body massage?
Body massage.
body massage machine. Go.
I love the dude with the helmet, like he's helping the kids. You just can't use it.
What the hell? Oh my gosh. So random.
Dead. It's really cold out here. Bye.
G.I. Joe!
All right. What is the crappiest or weirdest job you've ever had? It looks like there's one that involves mice and cockroaches in a computer.
Well, I did. That's definitely up there. I did work for years in college in the Geek squad.
Okay.
And I was living in Southwest Missouri, and we were the only Best Buy. Like you basically put a pin in our Best Buy, and there was one about 70 miles away in one direction, one about 110 miles away in another. So like we're kind of the focus for a pretty large segment of Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas. And, you'd get farmers who used a computer for something, like related to their agribusiness, but for whatever reason, instead of like putting it in their house, I guess probably because they spent all of their time in the barn, it would be like in their barn, and they would bring it into us and like, I don't know, like it only stays on for like a minute, and you just like open it up and it's full of like hay and like some mice have built a home in there, and like their fans are just like completely blocked with like just whatever's in a barn, like
yeah.
Like I'd seen heat sinks, right? The whole purpose of a heat sink, conceptually from a physics perspective, is you get a lot of surface area made out of a highly conductive material so that you can blow air through it and cool off your processor. These things would just be like full of dirt I was like, was there like a flood? Like, how did this happen? Like, I mean, like, I get it being like dusty, but this like has like solid caked on dirt in your heat sink. Like, I had to take it apart and like wash it.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And then there's like a guy once brought in a computer and he was just like, yeah, it's not working very good and it smells kind of weird when it runs. And I was like, smells weird. And like we plugged it in and after it was on for a couple minutes, like sure enough, there's like this weird, like burnt popcorny, caramely smell coming off of it. And so, you know,
nasty. You
open it up and I was like, at some point in time, did you like spill something on this? And he was like, oh yeah, no, but I cleaned it off. And he'd like the story on that dude was he'd spilled like an entire 2 liter, like it fell. He didn't even notice. And it just like glugged into his computer. And so he just like wipes off the top and he's like, seems good. Right. But like, like the interior components were just covered. And then computer gets hot on the inside and eventually like this. So it's just like this caramelized mass of disgustingness, which attracts bugs. Thus the cockroaches and all kinds of stuff like that. So, you know, you genuinely never knew what you were going to get. Like a person, like person brings in a computer, you just have no idea, right? Is it going to be some minor thing? Like, you know, like they can't find a driver for their modem or something like that. Or is it going to be like,
my cup holder's jammed.
Cup holder.
Oh, that's funny.
Those were the days.
Oh, those were the days. Oh, that's funny, man. I seem to think that you'll have many different sources to draw from here. And we've covered a good bit of it already, but what are you nerding out about these days?
Doing a lot of research into VR. Trying to decide if I got 3 kids. Really, only one of them's old enough to use VR. So I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to do research to determine if one, I can make an argument that it's necessary for everyone in the family. Like if I can find applications for my wife and daughter, that way I'm not just buying it for myself.
Right.
But then the second that I get into like anything like that, my brain is like, well, surely there's a developer mode, right? Like what can I do in VR? Like, would it be better to code in a VR environment? Like I got 3 monitors, but like, what if I had a VR headset? And I was like, could I then walk around the yard and code? Would that look weird?
You have like some weird harness with a keyboard in front of you, just walking around.
No, they sell like it's like one of those old timey cigarette trays from like, you know, like I don't know, like back in the 30s or something like that. And it's a thing that you wear it and it, you know.
Why am I not surprised? This is actually a thing.
And you can. I was actually going to buy one of those because like as a software engineer, you lead a fairly sedentary lifestyle. It's about to get cold and gross, but all through the spring and summer, like I could just walk around, use my little Wi-Fi hotspot, and I could just cruise around my neighborhood and do some work and stuff like that. Be healthy.
Yeah.
But the VR headset has led to a second thing that I'm nerding out about, which is historic European martial arts.
Because they're so connected, right?
There's more. Well, hold on. Here's the connection, right? There's a couple of steps, but it's there. So
I'm listening.
My daughter was watching the new Lord of the Rings series on Amazon, right? She's very fascinated with the character of Galadriel, and she's watching her do all of this like spinny, swordy stuff. And I was like, she's like, I want to do that. I want to be, and I'm always looking for like ways to keep her engaged in some sort of like activity and stuff like that. And like a lot of the sports, she keeps kind of like falling away from because I think the competition aspect like kind of gets to her. So I was like, well, why don't we do historic European martial arts? Because I'd studied it a little bit when I was in college. I like knew a guy and we messed around with it. So I can kind of get you started. And then if you never really want to spar with anyone, that's fine. But like, you know, you can like get some strength and, you know, some stuff like that. So I started getting back into historic European martial arts and I went out and I bought a longsword and a side sword for practice purposes. Okay. But I am no longer 19 years old and in college. I am 40 years old and I'm old and I'm decrepit. So I'm out there like doing these moves, like trying to like with the longsword. And I gave myself tennis elbow.
Oh no.
I guess technically I guess we'll call it longsword elbow because that sounds way cooler.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, while practicing with the saber, I, hurt my elbow.
Yeah.
And I thought, here's the thing, right, about the longsword is when it comes right down to it, it's like it's got weight on it and you need to be able to move that weight effectively. But there is also a lot of form that's built in. So if you know where your hands are, which is necessary for VR stuff like that, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to basically take those devices, put a solid stick between them, and basically be like, all right, now, what is your form like when it comes to historic European martial arts? And then you could do like a super hot thing where you just put a character up in front of it and you just like whack him with a sword and he breaks and falls down, or he blocks, and you can try that stuff. So then you can actually work on your form without getting sword elbow.
There you go. Nice. No,
and I'm sure with 3 kids and a wife and a job, I will have nothing but time to work on that particular piece of technology.
Oh yeah, that's excellent. I can definitely see how it all comes together now. Very nice. Yeah, we got a VR set for our kids last Christmas or the Christmas before. And I've always tried to work in like the activity based stuff, like they like Beat Saber, which is, it's not super active, but I'm like, why don't you do some boxing or something like that? Come on, kids, go outside and play, get some fresh air. We'll take the next best thing and get them on the VR.
I will tell you, the thing that concerns me is like technology is getting to the point where I think we can do it, but like there are things that just never really take off. Like even though the technology exists, they don't take off like in our lifetime correctly, right? So like I think about 3D movies, right? 3D movies have been hitting off and on since like the 1950s,
right?
And the thing that makes a 3D movie good or bad is whether or not you're using some aspect of the 3D for storytelling. And that's where like a lot of people use 3D as a gimmick. It fails, and then it goes and it seems like, I guess they're maybe still doing, I don't go out for a lot of movies anymore because I don't have to leave my home because of the way the world is. But I feel like they're not doing as many 3D movies, but like 5-6 years ago, it's like everything was also released in 3D.
Right.
And I'm concerned about VR technology because the technology's been floating around for a little bit and it's getting to the point where it's like small, but I'm concerned that no one's going to explore the technology appropriately, at least no one with money, like they're all going to like try and figure out how to do something, like short, quick and make a buck. And people are just going to be like, it'll be like the Power Glove for Nintendo,
right.
It'll be like, if you ever look into it, the Power Glove is some pretty cool technology and stuff like that. But like clearly, like it didn't transform the way we interacted with computers necessarily or the way we played games. So I'm always worried like a technology isn't gonna like it seems really cool, but that like it's not gonna take off. And I'm just gonna be like an old angry man. I was like, in my day, we were promised man that didn't do it.
Yeah. Totally.
We would go to the moon.
That's right. It makes me think of how action movies are done now. Like everything's green screen and it's all done in CGI and it looks amazing. But at the same time, at some point, it's just sort of eye candy. And so I'm thinking in particular, like the MCU movies, like we as a family, I sit down with my kids and we watch all of those and really enjoy that. And I was like, hey, they've never seen the original X-Men ones from like the early 2000s. And they're like, oh, this isn't Marvel. I'm like, well, yeah, it's Marvel. It's X-Men. So we watched through it and like the special effects, clearly they look kind of dated now, but the pacing of it and the storytelling is so much different. It's the same with the Spider-Man movies where it's like the special effects are sort of at a minimum. Like they add a little bit in there. It goes much slower. It seems like the storylines are pretty strong and they don't have to rely on the gimmicky stuff. And I like all those Marvel movies, but sometimes it's too much.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a problem that I don't know if it's just like, I don't know if this is humans or if this is people who just run movie studios or big studios or something like that. But like, so a thing that I've Now this is going to be a bit of a deep cut when it comes to like nerding out a little bit, but I have been going kind of down the rabbit hole of lo-fi indie horror games. So I'm a big fan of indie games, like, because I like when people can take something and like really distill it into its really simple components and still make it something really fun and enjoyable. So the example that I like to give is Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is like one dude, and he built a game that people love. It's fun to play. You know, it's interesting. It's got a good sound. I think he did it all 100% himself. He did the graphics. He did the coding. He did the music. Like it was all him, solo project, and it's fantastic. And he keeps adding stuff. And he's doing like another game. And you know, the thing is like it doesn't have cutting edge graphics, right? It's 2D. It looks like it's something that plays on a Super Nintendo, basic, but it works. It's fun. So what's fascinating to me is that there are people who are distilling, like they're getting the essence of what it is to make something truly scary. And they're seeing if they can bring that scare into an incredibly simple platform. So there's like actually this whole subgenre of the lo-fi horror game, which is meant to be played on a Game Boy emulator. And I've been amazed that people are
super lo-fi.
Yeah. People have been actually been able to get like not terrible like scares out of like a Game Boy level of like technology. And I think that's the thing is like the MCU is great. It's fun and it's nice to see all this expansive stuff. But like, I wonder, are we going to look down the line in like 30 or 40 years and we're going to be like, these movies were fantastic storytelling, or if it's just going to kind of be like, you know, fluffy, whatever, you know, because like there's not like almost all of the effects in the Wizard of Oz are practical effects, right? I don't think there's I don't even know if there's a special effect in the whole thing. And the beauty part is you can put the Wizard of Oz on for a kid, for an adult. It's a good story. It's fun to watch. Interesting stuff happens. You know, like it draws you in. That's good storytelling. Right. And I was like, would it be drastically improved if like something had dramatically exploded in like a weird purple flame and, you know, all of this other stuff and like blah, blah, blah. You know. Yeah. It might have helped a little bit, but like it wouldn't have fundamentally changed the story. And that's where I think like modern movies get a little like, they're like, hey, we got a guy with a computer who can, you know, make the sun explode. Let's do that. I'm like, yeah. Is that necessary for the story? No, but it looks cool. I'm like, yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I know. I wonder. Yeah, sometimes I go to the movies or I am starting to feel like the crotchety old man, like, wow, my eyes hurt. That's too loud. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We went back and we watched some of those older Marvel movies and I'm like, it's so much slower. I can actually follow the storyline. Like I'm not being, it's not this barrage of information coming at me. I don't know. I'm just getting old, I guess. Well, and that's the thing though, right? Like at what point in time, like when you get to a certain age, how do you tell if it's you getting old or if some things actually are worse? Because there's a definitive period in American cinema that's not as good as some of the other periods, right? So like there's a fantastic storytelling section of American cinema that starts in the 1970s and kind of goes into the, you know, it goes into the 80s. And then you start to hit that era of the blockbuster. The blockbuster is a little bit less on storytelling, but it's still pretty solid, right? You know, but there are definitely some stuff in the 60s and the 50s, which is kind of like, what were you guys doing? You put this out in front of people to watch. It's like, well, it cost a nickel, you know, make some of our money back. You know, it's like, so I don't know. There's a part of me that hopes I'm not getting old. Storytelling actually is just getting worse. And that eventually we're going to have like the next Scorsese or Spielberg who's going to pop up and they're going to be like, you know, the new master craftsman is going to, show up and put all of the other bad guys to shame and be like, behold my masterpiece. And it'll be in VR. Totally. I have some buddies that work in a creative agency, and their whole thing is they really talk about that. There's sort of a cheap way that people talk about storytelling, you know, like in their marketing and stuff. But I think these guys really get it. Like they go back to really traditional ways of doing storytelling, and that
it sticks. It just sticks. Like you have, it's sort of like you have an elevator pitch for your company or something like that. If you can't sort of say it in a very short paragraph and get across one idea that you can come back to, it's not going to be a classic. It's not going to stick. It's like Shawshank Redemption. What does he say? You better get busy living or get busy dying. And it's like, how many times does that theme come across in that movie over and over and over again, even visually, like from light to dark? It's just a total masterpiece in that way. But you can't make up for that kind of storytelling with just eye candy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like, I think humans, we seek both the familiar and the unfamiliar, but if you completely discard the familiar, right, and you just give people something completely alien, it's like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of walking through like a modern art gallery, but like the whole idea behind early forms of modern art is, what is art, right? Is this art? Does this count? And, the thing is the question becomes kind of pointless at some point in time. Yeah, I'll call that one art, that one no. And eventually, like, I always get to the point where I'm just kind of like, sure, well,
yeah.
I don't even know if I care anymore, right? It's like,
right.
You can tell the hero's journey story all over again. You can tell the redemptive story all over again. You can tell the comedy. You can do the romance. You can do all of that stuff. And you can put like a little spin on it, a little different bit of a take on it. You can put it in a different thing. You can make it so that you connect in some other way. It's like, this one takes place on a fishing boat. I like fishing, or I don't know much about fishing. Oh, that's interesting. Like you can do all that stuff, but we default to like the lowest level of storytelling, right? It's like hero good, smite enemy, which is very basic, and like people can kind of get on with that. So that gives you this feeling that like I'm watching a movie that I understand, but then the rest of it's just like lasers in space, ship being cut in two. Oh no, there's no oxygen. Eyes boiling. But still, basically, at the end of the day, hero good, enemy bad, right? Like,
right.
Okay. Oh, but the enemy's strong in this one, so it's a challenge. I'm like,
okay,
yeah.
That guy has muscles. He's strong. He won.
He's mean. Look how big he is. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
funny.
Well, there might be a bit of a tangent. This isn't really super icon-y or anything like that. But this is what happens when you triple major history, German, and computer information science. Everything's just it's a jumble of ideas.
No, it's great, man. But it connects. It connects. That's the beauty of it. Thanks for listening in to Podcast Awesome. A special thank you to Alex for coming on the show. If you like what you've heard, please give us a rating and review and share this episode with your nerd friends. This episode was produced and edited by yours truly, Matt Johnson. The Fun Awesome theme song was composed by Ronnie Martin, and audio mastering was done by Chris Enns at Lemon Productions.
Oh man, check out that thing, man.
What do you want to do with it?
Let's launch over it.
Who wants a body massage?
What did he just say to us?
Hello, Mr. Body Massage Machine. Gone.
What the hell?
Body massage.
G.I. Joe!